My name is Liz Mackinlay and I'm a professor here in the Faculty of Education. At the moment I'm wearing two hats. I'm working at Southern Cross University, but I'm also an external chair of ethics at the University of Queensland. I've been working in the ethics space for many years now, both at low risk ethics as well as high risk ethics. And over that time, I've been thinking a lot about what makes a successful ethics application from the reviewing perspective. So what I'd like to share with you are my top 5 tips for submitting a successful ethics application. Tip number 1, principles of ethics. What I mean by that is we would like you to become really familiar with the principles of ethical research with human beings as outlined in the National Statement. The National Statement is a guide to conducting research with human participants, and it is absolutely your go-to when you're applying for ethics. The 4 principles are: number 1, research merit and integrity; number 2, respect; number 3, beneficence; and number 4, justice. What we mean by research merit and integrity is, what does the research design look like and how is it going to ensure that there is no harm being done to human participants? Number 2, respect, speaks to the capacity that we need to give to each and every person who works with us in research to have agency and choice and autonomy in deciding whether or not they would like to participate and on what grounds that participation takes place. Number 3, beneficence, is all about what are the benefits of participating in this research for the people that we're working with. This speaks absolutely to issues of risk and harm and how we manage those and mitigate them so that the research is of benefit to the end users of the work that we do. So number 4 is justice, and I guess this, out of all 4 principles, this is the one that we find people have the most difficulty in applying and understanding and getting their heads around. Justice speaks to absolutely what the word contains, which is this research going to progress in a manner that is just and enables equal participation and equity of participation? And so what we think about here is distributive justice and ideas of inclusion and exclusion and how we can make sure that it does lead to a just outcome. And when you're answering questions on the ethical clearance application called the HARIA, or the Human Research Ethics Application, what we'd like you to do is think about how each of these 4 principles might apply in relation to everything that you're being asked. The second tip that I have for you is the thinking stage, and this is the work that you need to do before you start filling out your ethical clearance application. Thinking about your research, you need to have a really clear idea of how am I actually going to make this happen? How am I going to work with people? How am I going to recruit people? How am I going to ensure that I have informed consent? And then what am I actually asking people to do? All of these things need to be really clearly thought through before you start applying for ethics, because these are the kinds of questions that we need you to respond to so that we can ensure as a reviewing committee that you are looking after the interests of people. We want to make sure that there is going to be no potential or possibility for any harm to come to those who decide to work with you. Tip number 3 is about the writing stage. I can't emphasise enough how important it is for you to convey what you're doing in your ethics application in a simple, clear, everyday, easy to read manner. The other thing is that if you've worked through the thinking stage, by the time you get to writing, it should be very precise in terms of you having a really good grasp of what it is you're doing and why. The other thing that we often see missing in ethical clearance applications is detail. Details, details, details. You cannot give us enough, because all we have when we look at your application is what you put down on paper. So make sure that you've thought of absolutely everything that will give us a really clear understanding of how you're going to do this research and why. Detail is so important. Another really important thing to consider when you're writing your application and sharing with us what it is you'd like to do is to take the perspective of someone who is going to participate. What would it feel like for them to work with you and to be asked to do the kinds of things that you're asking them to do for your research project? That old adage, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, is really helpful here. So think about it from the perspective of a participant and consider the kinds of detail that you would like to know if you were to participate in your own research. Tip number 4 is proofread. please go through your application with a fine-tooth comb so that you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. This is about grammar and spelling and punctuation, but more importantly, this is about making sure that what you've said in your application is replicated in your participant information sheets and consent forms. If you've said that you're going to interview people for 30 minutes, make sure that in your participant information sheet, you're letting the participants know that's exactly what you're going to do. As an ethics committee, these are the kinds of details that we go through really carefully. And one of the other tips that I would suggest to ensure that everything's lining up and what you're doing in one place is what you say you're doing in another is to perhaps to begin your ethical clearance application by writing your participant information sheet and consent form. A little secret, as ethics reviewers, that's often the first place we go to in an ethical clearance application. We go straight to the participant information sheet because that's the public document that people will see, and that should very clearly outline in everyday language, simply, precisely, what it is you're asking people to do and how you're going to look after them. So please make sure that you cross-check everything and that everything that you've said in one place is exactly what you've said in the other. Tip number 5 is to seek advice. There are so many people in the university who have experience with ethics, your supervisors, colleagues, peers, fellow students, as well, of course, as ethical people who work in the ethics office and do the work on the ground for reviewing. So please make sure that you speak to people if you have any concerns or questions or uncertainties. The ethics team at the university, in that broad sense, is always here to help you. And of course, you can always come and chat with me if you'd like some specific advice. Thanks for listening. I am always really happy to talk ethics. Ethics is one of my passions. So please come and chat with me if you'd like any advice on your ethical clearance application. And of course, reach out to the HDR Society.